it's one thing to just stay silent. It's another thing to actually toe the line or even, go along with a lot of the crap. And we saw this earlier today, especially again, this makes no sense. Somebody even just said
Taibbi. I was thinking of Taibbi too.
I'm so disappointed. Like,
I've never been more disappointed.
We've had him on,
Taibbi.
right? It's so disappointing.
I actually thought the fact that he keeps saying this isn't even a real free speech issue, when the amount of censorship on this issue, there's nothing else like it. I mean, it's actually, I have frequently said it. It's one of the reasons I became a free speech lawyer. I grew up like, my dad was like, do not talk about this issue. Like, I'm going to tell you stories about my life under the occupation, but don't tell people because the Zionists will destroy your life and you'll never have a career. Like, I grew up with the understanding you could not talk about this or you wouldn't have a future. And him saying, oh, this just amounts to 2 failed deportations. I can't get worked up about it. And today he said, like, the pro-Palestine people don't make arguments. They just scream at you. Like, the pro-Israel people make coherent arguments. At least they try. What are you talking about? All they do is scream anti-Semitism and call your boss. Like, that's what they've been doing to me for a year and a half.
It's one thing entirely, because again, I communicated with him privately. I'm not going to say what was discussed, but let's just say that I asked him, would you come on? Do you want to defend your position? And he said,
he's been on a couple times. Like, we've had him on the show a couple times before. Just, In
fact, Taibbi is actually one of the inflection points. We look back now because our channel has finally taken off. He was somebody who helped bump our channel because he came on the day after he appeared in front of the House Select Committee with Wasserman Schultz and another nincompoop.
Okay.
He came on us.
And it was it was a great conversation, but the idea, it's one thing to say privately, I'm not talking about Israel, I don't want to address this issue. It's another thing for you to actually get out there and basically lick the ass of Barry Weiss. Like, nuts.
And calling us jealous losers? Like, are you kidding? I'm not jealous of someone who launders genocide. I might not have 1,000 thread sheets, but at least I can sleep at night because I'm not. Well, she probably sleeps fine because she's no more.
Let me tell you one thing about sociopaths. They sleep soundly.
Yeah.
Soundly.
Oh, yeah.
Because in their mind, I remember when Wasserman Schultz was confronted about the fact that she is considered one of the most corrupt representatives in politics, and her response was, I know better than everybody else. That's her response, which is why not only does she trade on inside information, but she invests in the war stocks that are specifically for the genocide in Gaza, specifically for them. So it takes a certain level of psychopathy to do this. And if you're at that level, when you say, how do you sleep at night? Well, they sleep pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I know. I always, unfortunately, I don't think that these people are susceptible to necessarily to shame or even ruin the way that we think we do. I just have to think, well, then at the end of the day, there's something missing there, and they're not going to live the fullest life, like the life that we will live, because we feel the ups and the downs, and with shame and emotion comes a fulfillment when you know you're doing the right thing, right? And sociopaths they don't have that feeling, and I don't know how much of a how much of a consolation prize that is, but for me, Matt Taibi, who I don't think is a sociopath at all. I don't actually know what's going on there. He's
probably he might be compromised. There might be something
compromised.
His book, The Divide, is one of my favorite books, and I always try to tell people, like, it was so brilliant, the concept, going to the courthouse where they did the HSBC. They did, for people who don't know, it was 2012, I believe. HSBC pled guilty to laundering. They did basically every kind of financial crime you could think of related to drug cartels, and they were able to walk away with a fine. So on the very same day that they pled guilty and they took their fine, Matt Taibi went to the New York City courthouse that they were pleading guilty in, and he talked to normal Americans, and he heard their stories about the criminal justice system and how they interacted with it and what happened to them, right? So it was a juxtaposition between how the rich are treated in our criminal justice system compared to the poor. It was brilliant. It was so brilliant. And it was so just on point. And I loved it. And it's one of my absolute favorite nonfiction books. And so for me, and I don't turn anyone into a hero. I know we all have our personal struggles and everything, but just to see this person who had so much moral clarity on everything else, and then just he's like a freaking boomer, like a Fox News boomer when it comes to this, and it's weird, and it's like, what the hell is going on here? You know,
it's disappointing.
And it's worse with somebody like him because he has done it.
Yeah.
He really
Yeah.
has.
It's
But he's selling out. Like he's selling out, and maybe and again, look, he's older than people think. He's actually in his 50s, and he has 3 kids, I believe, and he lives in North Jersey. So I mean, Lord knows he's got a lot of expenses and things that he has to think about. And if his
I looked at his Substack makes like 600 to 1,000 to $1 million a year. Like, I mean, kids aren't that expensive. He's probably doing just
what type
fine.
Of schools you put them through. Yeah, no.
Well,
listen,
okay.
But then there's also, but you're in DC. There is a certain lifestyle that people want to have. There's certain restaurants that people want to go to on the regular, and as thick as it is, they're not willing to sacrifice things like that. That's why But that's also why Pac-Man has a conniption anytime he loses any of his paid subscribers.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm like, really? Like, your legacy and your conscience is worth, a couple nice dinners out every month? Like, F that. I mean, I don't know. I live pretty meagerly. Like, I don't make a lot of money. I could have, if I wanted to, I could be a freaking Republican shill all day long, and I could make a shit ton of money. But what kind of life is that? That's so weird,
Are you Insurrection Barbie? You're Insurrection Barbie.
I will slap you if you ever do that.
I'm breaking your chest. If there is somebody who actually is doing a good job, it's the person that Taibbi used to do a podcast with. And if anybody has been good to us, it's Katie Halper. And for somebody who has really used her platform for good. Katie, we love you. She's responsible for us having both Anthony Aguilar and Dr. Faraz Sitwa on our show recently. So this is a tribute to Katie, who really has been doing amazing work lately. Unlike Matt Taibi, her former.
So disturbing about what Israel is doing and the IDF is doing is that they are doing it with glee. And unlike the Nazis, they're not hiding it. And we know this because they document this. They document not just the war crimes, but they document their glee. You even have Israeli soldiers themselves comparing themselves to Nazis. One of them said, "I felt like a Nazi. It looked exactly like we were the Nazis and they were the Jews." They, of course, being Palestinians. Another soldier said it is justified and, in fact, essential to learn from every possible source, even, however shocking it may sound, how the German army fought in the Warsaw Ghetto. So there we have Israeli soldiers literally learning from Nazi tactics and comparing themselves explicitly to the Nazis and the Palestinians to the Jews. Ironically, according to the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism, it is anti-Semitic to, quote, draw comparisons between contemporary Israeli policies to that of the Nazis. So I guess those soldiers are themselves anti-Semitic, according to this definition.
I mean, when you think about it, it's like looking in a mirror in many respects. But the other scary part, which is what I've said is the biggest issue with Zionism, is that they want anti-Semitic fervor to explode. That's why you're seeing so many people in the comment sections. Jen, you were talking about the other day, the people were saying it's the Jews or Hitler was actually right.
I spend a lot of time in our comments trying to correct people and educate people as to the difference between Judaism and Zionism, because I saw this coming a mile away. I'm like, this is going to create so much anti-Semitism based on what people see as reasonable. You keep affiliating this state, this Zio-Nazi state with Jews. Yeah, that's going to, especially people who don't know a lot of Jewish people or you never met Jewish people, like this is going to be our legacy. And it's like, it's just, Yes, people are hating the Jews. So I spend a lot of time correcting the difference between Judaism and Zionism.
I think there's something interesting in that clip, though, because something that I have found extremely disturbing that I see all the time is this kind of like quote or idea in Zionism where they talk about we're not the Jews on trembling knees anymore. You see this denigration of Holocaust victims, correct? And that's almost kind of fascinating what she just said, because it's almost like, do these people have these own super hyper insecurities that they are trying to overcome in this psychotic, demonic way?
Yeah. Well, you have to go back to the history of Zionism and how it was founded. And it was essentially, Zionism is an extremely anti-Semitic concept, and anti-Semitism only comes from Europe. Like there was no, in the Muslim world, there is no anti-Sem, like that's not a thing. That's an European concept. And so many Jews were like self-loathing in the way where it was, first of all, Jews were not considered white. Okay. Jews were not considered white. So in their mind, they were lesser unless they would get their own nation. If they had their own nation and their own language, then they would be a real people. And we're not going to be the victims, but it was all secular. Like those people were all secular. And so they were very self-loathing and anti-Semitic. They weren't about being Jews. They weren't actually practicing Jews. And
it sounds very inferiority complex, kind of, you know, like we've got to overcome this. Now we're the Germans, we're the strong, powerful ones, you know, and it's like, you know, this sounds like we need a therapy session here. Right? You know,
well, it's, you know what it is. It's really, it's not that complicated. Trauma begets trauma. So you have people that were traumatized, and I'm not even talking Holocaust. I'm talking way before that, like in the creation of Zionism, because anti-Semitism has always been a thing in terms of Jew hate. Jew hate has been a thing. Like my relatives, my ancestors all fled Russia from the pogroms at the turn of the last century, and their businesses were set on fire. And like this, there was a real Jew hate, and it was through Russia and Eurasia, and it just sort of like it was there. And so they were convinced that in order to be, you know, real Europeans, that this was what they had to do. And it was before. Now, World War II and the Holocaust provided ample opportunity and excuse. It was really like a manufacturing consent opportunity to push forward. But this has always been a very anti-Semitic, white supremacist project.
100%. We'll continue.
Another point of comparison, although it's actually a point of departure, is the relationship between the genocide and public opinion. Now, the Nazis tried as best they could to hide what they were doing. And in fact, the biggest concentration camps that they built were outside of Germany. And they didn't do them in public places. And even though it was illegal to resist the Nazis, you did have some resistance from people who were fighting against what the Nazis were doing within Germany. In Israel, however, everyone knows what's happening. It's documented by legacy media, it's documented by social media, and yet the vast majority of Israelis think that the government is using either an appropriate amount of force or not enough force against the Palestinians. You even have young people dancing to genocide. Another thing that Israeli society seems to be A-okay with is the rape of Palestinians. Now, Western media spread a narrative of mass rape used as a weapon by Hamas. Every single so-called witness to rape on October 7th has backtracked. No media, however, has corrected this. But what has the Western media totally ignored, which, ironically enough, the Israeli media has covered? The rape of Palestinians. There's literal video footage of Israeli soldiers who pick up a Palestinian, raise their shields to hide what they're doing, but are obviously gang raping him. So what happened next? There were protests. Protests against the rape? No. There were protests that have been dubbed right to rape protests.
Yeah, I don't think there's any parallel, right? This is kind of a new thing. In I don't know.
You sound like you wanted to say something.
Oh no, I mean it's just so depressing. I don't like, and the fact that our government supports this and, you know, just ignores the Palestinian deaths and suffering, and then like every, you know, it's so depressing. I don't even know how to deal with it anymore.
Just for those who are either Gen X or millennial, which I think we all are, it reminds me of one of the early Simpsons episodes where Mr. Burns hits Bart with his car. And when he's brought to court, he says, I should be allowed to run over as many kids as I want. And that's how they see it. They're like, we're Zionists. Yeah. We can do whatever the fuck we want. Who are you to say otherwise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it comes.
You have people, including members of government, you have soldiers, you have civilians who protested the punishment of rapists. That's what they were upset about. It really is insane when you think about it. Literally, the entire Western media apparatus devoted itself to talking about rapes for which there is no evidence, and devoted itself to remaining silent about rapes which were documented by Israeli media. One Israeli journalist in a Times of Israel blog post said, Lebensraum needed for Israel's exploding population. And if that sounds familiar, it may be because Hitler used the word Lebensraum in Mein Kampf to describe what was needed to move the German population eastward. Likewise, Israel is expanding, not just in Palestine, the West Bank, Gaza, but also Syria and Lebanon. And there are calls from up on high, from Israeli officials, for creating a greater Israel.
That's the plan. I also want to put, there were people, we've gotten comments on some of our videos, and I've seen in the chat, like, that me saying Zio-Nazis and comparing them to Nazis is just, that's not right. Yeah, go fuck yourself. I cannot, you're right, because they're worse. And Katie's right, they are worse. Because most people in Germany really didn't know the extent to what was going on, at least not until the final solution part. You know, it was kept from them. And we're sitting here watching this live time. So yeah, I'm going to call Nazi when I see a Nazi. And, you know, yes, technically, are they the National Socialists? No, but I think we all know what we mean.
So I am sympathetic to the argument and I've talked about this because I do feel like when we invoke Nazism, it does, people say like it kind of like centers Jewish victimhood. And I do get that. I think that that's a legitimate argument. I think that there's Zionists. I don't call Zionists Nazis. I call them Zionists. And I think that Zionism should become as synonymous with evil as Nazism is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I meld them.
I kind of like it as a rhetorical tool because for so many people, like it's ingrained in their consciousness, like Nazism is bad, right? We know Nazism is bad. You don't really have to argue that. So when you show them the parallels, that actually can really be very powerful. Like not just, you know, say that that's the only way of looking at it or, you know, well, we can't acknowledge that it's its own kind of evil as well. But I do think it can be a very powerful thing for a lot of people. So I'm not someone who rejects making the historical comparisons.
She and I disagree on this, and we go back and forth in text all the time.
Well, it's just a matter of, I look at this as somebody who comes from a Jewish background and was raised very Zionist, and watched my grandparents and great grandparents like supporting Israel and sending money to the JNF and all this stuff. And I can't help but think that Hitler and that concept, that white supremacist Nazi concept, ultimately won, because you were able to take the same people and that were victims of that and turn an entire into perpetrators. It's really the big picture is not good. So the things that they're doing to them are right out of a Nazi playbook. So I can't, like, the parallels are uncanny.
I understand. I don't think that anyone that like makes those comparisons, I don't think it's ever like made in bad faith, but I do understand Palestinians saying like, actually, we are our own victims. We should be centered. We are the victims right now, right? And I do think that there is, you know, and so I understand it's sometimes, a lot of times I see, and no offense, but I do see anti-Zionist Jews kind of making the argument that this is bad for Jews. And it's like, maybe it's bad for Jews, but actually it's really, really bad for Palestinians. Right?
No, I don't think we're not
yeah.
center. I don't think calling them out as Nazis centers it on Jews at all. I think it's calling them out as the most evil thing that we have all been taught basically in our history, and causing like people to see that this is not any different or any lesser than what we thought was the most heinous thing we ever saw.
I mean,
that's why it isn't that I only talk about centering the Palestinians, you know, it's just when you're trying to talk to people here, it's impactful.
It's like a reference point, you know, because you don't have to convince people that Nazis were bad, right? Like everyone agrees Nazis were bad. So we start with that understanding, and then once you show the very clear parallels, so I think it's easier, you know, it's almost like it's a shortcut. You don't have to make the case from the ground up, right?
Agreed.
Sorry.
Last thought, Mel. We want to finish this one up.
Yeah, I want to get to the point where we see Zionists just as bad, right?
Yes.
It is just, and so when I say that you're a Zionist, it is you should recoil at the thought that,
but we're not
calling you that.
But we're not there
yet.
That's
by God, yeah, we're getting there. Yeah.
We're getting.
This plan for Greater Israel is so frightening that even Moshe Yalon, a former IDF commander, said,
על עליונות יהודית. מיין קאמפ במהופך. שערותיי סומרות שאני אומר את זה.
Here are some other comparisons that one cannot help but draw between the Israeli government and the Nazi government. Hitler in 1939, speaking to the German parliament, said, if the world of international financial Jewry, both in and outside of Europe, should succeed in plunging the nations into another world war, the result will be the extermination of the Jewish race in Europe. In 2016, during an interview, former Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said, quote, if they, the people of Gaza, engage in a new war on Israel, it will be the final war for them because we will completely destroy them. The following is a quote from Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS. We had the moral right, we had the duty to our people to destroy this people which wanted to destroy us. Now listen to this from Ezra Yakin, a veteran from the Deir Yassin massacre, one of the worst massacres of the Nakba, who on October 13th, 2023, talked to Israeli soldiers about the need to go into battle.
עלו והצליחו, תכסחו אותם כמה שיותר, שלא להשאיר מהם זכר, שלא הם, לא אמא שלהם, לא הילדה שלהם, לא התינוקות שלהם, אסור להם לחיות לחיות האלה. נקבל עוד טילים מהחיזבאללה, ויקומו כל הערבים בארץ נגדנו, ואז לא תהיה ברירה, מי יש לו נשק יירה בהם. אתה יש לך שכן ערבי, אתה לא תחכה שהוא יבוא אליך הביתה. תיכנס אליו הביתה ותירה.
Yeah.
I doubt that Matt Taibi will be doing any of this type of journalism anytime soon.
I mean, I saw somebody in the chat say something about that they were disappointed that Katie didn't call out Matt, I guess. And, you know, that's always kind of a hard thing. It's like he's being like called out by a lot of people. Yeah. Is it really necessary for her to point it out? Like, and is there some real benefit that would come from that? Like if that were really, if we were talking about standing on a platform about a genocide, fine. But to use your platform to call, like, I don't know. I just don't. And I also don't know what the status of their relationship is, you know, in terms of friends.
It's weird. Don't know. It's weird when it's someone you worked closely with. I got a lot of like pressure to call out Jay Bhattacharya because, you know, he's now the NIH director and they had this like NIH put out, and I had some knowledge about what happened and whatever. And I just wouldn't do it. And like, I really like him and I was just not going to do it. And I was like, there are plenty of people calling this out.
Yeah. But I don't think that's a moral obligation. Like to me, that is not something, calling out somebody for what they said about something is not a moral obligation.
Or didn't say.
Correct. I don't.
Especially when there are plenty of other people doing it. Like if there was nobody else doing it, I'd be like, okay, this is on me now. But if there are 100 other people doing it, like I don't need to, you know, I have a personal relationship with someone.
Yeah, there was a dog pile on Taibbi, I think, on Saturday, and then again today as well.
My criticisms of his tweet got like 1/20th the views and got like the same number of likes, which gives me hope. This is not like I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying like clearly I think that indicates that my position
No,
is more popular than his.
ratio.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we
Oh,
all-
Yeah, you have a flight to get.
I ratioed the shit out of him just earlier today.
Good.
You know, I ratioed him with 5.2 thousand views, and he has 217,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so on my comment, so
he's
yeah.
the one
take
thing. The
that.
one thing we learned from this is that there will be no coming back from it. Like this
Yeah.
is
No.
a once in a lifetime, probably circumstance in which, depending on how things evolve going forward, no one is going to forget who did not stand on the side of justice.